What's going on, everyone? Hope you're all doing great and ready for some Apex talk because we've got a fresh update that just hit the game. Update 1.0.110. And yeah, there's a bunch to unpack here. It's not one of those massive season overhauls, but honestly, the kind of patch that quietly shakes things up just enough to make a difference in how fights feel, how certain legends play, and how the overall pace of the game changes in subtle but real ways. If you've been playing this week, you probably noticed it right away. The Peacekeeper doesn't feel quite as snappy. Altar's Portal feels a bit more grounded, and Seer players are suddenly thinking twice about how they use their ultimate. So let's talk about what's really going on here, what the devs were probably thinking, and how this is going to affect your games moving forward. So first off, that Peacekeeper change. I know, everyone's talking about it. This one stings a bit if you're a shotgun main, especially those who love that satisfying chunk damage of the PK. The rechamber time between shots got increased, and the magazine size dropped from 6 shells to 5. And that might sound small, like who cares, it's just one shell, but trust me, in Apex, that's a pretty big deal. Before this patch, you could roll into a close fight and just unload. Boom, 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 really quickly, clearing squads if your aim was solid. But now you've got to think about your timing, your reloads, and your positioning a little more carefully. You can't just rely on spamming your shots and hoping to clean up. You'll need to commit to that first hit, make it count, and be ready to reposition or swap weapons if it doesn't finish the job. I think that's what Respawn wanted. Keep the Peacekeeper deadly, but make it demand precision again. It's less of a crutch weapon now, and more of a skill check. Now, I've seen a lot of players already saying they're swapping back to the Mastiff or the EVA-8 because of this, and honestly, that makes sense. The EVA feels smoother than it has in a while, especially with a purple bolt, and it gives that more forgiving spread pattern for people who prefer consistency over burst damage. So if you're feeling like the Peacekeeper isn't hitting the same way, maybe experiment with other shotguns again, or even go hybrid with a close-range SMG like the CAR or R99. Those are going to feel a lot more fluid in those rapid close-quarter fights. Okay, next up, Altar. This Legends kit has been one of the more creative ones in Apex, but also one of the trickiest to balance. The update finally addressed a couple of the more frustrating mechanics around her Void Nexus ability. Before this patch, teams could use multiple Nexuses at once and do some crazy repositioning stuff that really threw off fights. Like imagine trying to chase a team only for them to pop into a second Nexus across the map. It just broke the flow of combat. Now, there's a strict limit. Only one Void Nexus can exist at a time. And honestly, that's a good change. It forces teams to use it more strategically instead of spammy or exploitative. On top of that, Altar can no longer use Void Nexus while she's knocked. Again, totally fair. That mechanic used to feel unfair when Altar could get downed and still teleport to safety. Now it's going to feel more balanced. You actually have to commit to your portal plays and can't just rely on it as a get-out-of-jail card. What I really like about this is that it's going to make coordinated squads stand out even more. The best Altar players will still find ways to clutch rotations and bait enemy pushes with clever portal placement, but you won't see it abused in random lobbies the same way. Expect Altar's skill ceiling to stay high, but the frustration factor to go down a bit. Now let's talk Seer. Yeah, he's been through more reworks and tweaks than almost any other recon legend at this point. This patch takes another swing at fine-tuning his ultimate, Exhibit. The ADS hover effect inside the ultimate has been removed, which might sound minor, but it's a real change to how fights play out in those bubble moments. Previously, Seer players could hold ADS inside the Exhibit with a kind of steady tracking advantage, giving them a pseudo wallhack effect for long stretches. Removing that makes gunfights feel more natural again. But Respawn didn't just nerf him outright. They gave something back. Now, when enemies leave the exhibit area, they trigger a brief full-body scan. It's actually pretty clever because it punishes teams that try to dip in and out of the zone or disengage mid-fight. It's like, okay, you can escape, but you'll be revealed for a moment. It adds a layer of tactical awareness instead of just pure visual chaos. What this means in practice is that Seer mains are going to have to rethink positioning. Instead of just dropping the ultimate in the middle of chaos and holding down angles, you'll want to use it more deliberately, like at choke points or right before enemies retreat. You're not controlling the space the same way as before, but you can still get solid value out of the scans. If you're someone who plays a lot of recon or support legends, this version of Seer might actually feel more balanced and rewarding because it's based more on timing and map sense rather than passive info overload. And yes, the Sentinel is back. It's been restored to working as intended, which is great news for long-range players. For a while, the Sentinel had a couple of issues that made it feel inconsistent, but now that it's fixed, sniping might see a small resurgence again. I know a lot of people have been leaning into mid-range guns like the Nemesis or the 30-30 repeater lately, but the Sentinel being back means you can realistically hold distance and play those sniper support roles again. If you like picking fights from range or popping shields to start engagements, it's time to dust off your Sentinel. Especially in ranked, where third-party control and long-range damage matter, this could make a noticeable difference. Now, there are also a handful of smaller fixes and tweaks tucked into this patch that are worth mentioning, especially for people who notice the little stuff. There were some improvements to overall server performance, specifically aimed at reducing those slow-motion moments that happen mid-fight. Yeah, we've all been there. Everything suddenly goes weirdly slow and you just know the server's choking. Those moments should happen less now. There were also fixes to the Trident. Remember how weird it felt recently when the controls didn't match your keybinds or the brake input wasn't responding properly? They reverted it back to how it used to be, and there's a plan to fix the UI display for it later. That alone should make vehicle play smoother. There was also a fix for that awkward first-person bug when you'd hop into a Trident and your POV just glitched. It's gone now, so everything should feel more consistent. And for the Maggie mains, rejoice. Her sprint speed while using shotguns was adjusted back to normal. It wasn't working properly before, which was kind of ironic since that's a huge part of her identity. Now, she feels right again. All these small fixes might not sound flashy, but together they add up to smoother gameplay. Apex has always been about that flow, movement, timing, the feel of fights, and these small fixes help restore that. What's interesting is that this update doesn't introduce any new content or events. It's purely about refinement. It's Respawn tightening the screws, cleaning up some bugs, and addressing balance without throwing the meta into chaos. And honestly, that's refreshing. Sometimes the best patches are the ones that don't add a dozen new things, but instead just make the core game feel better, because Apex, at its best, doesn't need massive reinvention. It just needs to feel fair, responsive, and skill-based. I've been reading through community reactions since this went live, and it's pretty mixed, but leaning positive. A lot of players are happy that the Peacekeeper isn't as overbearing now, even if they used it themselves. Nobody likes getting one-tapped in a corner by a PK spammer. On the other hand, there are some folks who think Respawn went a little too far and made the PK feel clunky. It's probably one of those changes where, after a week or two, everyone adjusts, and it starts to feel natural again. With Alter, I've seen almost universal agreement. People love that the portal spam is gone. It makes matches feel cleaner and more predictable in a good way. As for Seer, opinions are divided. Some Seer mains feel like they've lost one of the main reasons to pick him, while others appreciate the new balance because it brings more skill expression back to his kit. One underrated part of all this is how these small tweaks affect team compositions in ranked and competitive play. I can already see squads rethinking their setups. For example, teams that relied heavily on PK Alter pushes might now look toward Mad Maggie or Revenant to fill that aggression gap. Recon teams might swap Seer out for Bloodhound again since the info flow is more controlled now. And for players who love long-range control, the Sentinel coming back means sniping setups might actually be worth running again, especially when paired with leads like Vantage or Crypto for extra vision.